Hello guys and gals, me Mudahar, and I was talking about this video for a fair bit, the de-Google video, and to be fair, ladies and gentlemen, it took a little bit, but here we are. So, the moral of the story before you start off, if you want the TLDR, stop using Google search, okay? Google search used to be one of the best ways to search on the internet back in the days when Google's tagline was "Don't be evil." Now, I don't mind Google whatsoever. Obviously, I'm on YouTube for all things considered. I'm uploading a video here. But the primary thing that I used to use Google for was searching the internet. Now, I don't know about you guys, but going onto the internet and searching for anything and typing the words Reddit at the end of it, or trying to put in, wildcards like -AI so you can get rid of the blatantly hallucinating AI overviews, is not something that I enjoy. And the other aspect about Google that I've started to really dislike when it comes to the search is the amount of, I would say, advertisements or promotions that are getting thrown your way. It always seems like before I get to the relevant thing that Google wants to show me, it always comes out to, hey, here's a sponsored link right over here. Hey, sometimes a sponsored link might lead to malware, as we saw when it came to OBS Studio, right? It was a bad, egregious error right there. But sometimes it feels like I'm trying to be sold a product before I actually reach my relevant result. Now, it doesn't really shock me considering Google's primary method of revenue is, again, advertising. They are using basically the amount of people that go to Google every single day to advertise to you, to make money. And again, this is just a business. Now, there's a whole market of different search engines that are out there. And ultimately, in the end, I realized, listen, I don't want to just guide you from going to Google all the way to fucking Yahoo. No one uses Yahoo. Not even Yahoo uses Yahoo. No one wants to use Bing. No one wants to use an inferior search engine. But sometimes you just want to use a search engine where all of the crap is really removed. And the best way to kind of do that is really self-hosting. So I talked about things like self-hosting already, but the reality of it is that it takes a little bit of effort to get going. So this video is kind of going to be a little bit of tutorial for it. But anyways, I was looking into this thing from like The Verge, and they were actually showing one of the craziest things to radicalize me. Now, to give you guys an example of how ass Google search has kind of gotten, one of these things that I read from The Verge, right, was where they showed that their own articles started to get rewritten, at least a headline, for Google search. So for instance, this is the headline where they said, "You can't replace the battery in Lego Smart Bricks, and many of its sensors aren't active yet." So Google decides to rewrite that as "you can't replace the battery in Lego Smart Bricks," right? So for instance, The Verge said, "I met Olaf, the frozen robot who might be the future of Disney parks." So then The Verge is like, Google rewrites that headline allegedly as "the frozen robot who might be the future of Disney parks." So I don't know if Google's AI is thinking that's more clickable. I'm sure they probably learned from all the vague titles that people have to make on YouTube in order for it to work well in the algorithm, because yes, that's unfortunately how things have to be. Okay, sometimes being entirely verbose just doesn't necessarily work. And again, people will show you, content creators will just show you their back-end analytics to necessarily prove it. The websites and the internet that we are using are slowly being destroyed by, I would say, a combination of artificial intelligence and a lot of these algorithmic methods where, again, it feels like the platform itself pushes you to be not the kind of person you want to be, just in order to even succeed or tread water in some cases. Now, I was on the internet too, and I saw that people have been switching to things like Kagi. Now, this is not a promotional video. For anybody that doesn't know what Kagi is, it's basically a paid-for search engine, yes. So on their website, they're like, listen, on our search engine, we don't give you fucking ads. On Google, they do give you fucking ads. And they showed the left and right, this guy's looking for PostgreSQL's query analysis, and here they actually get documentation as the first result. On the right, they end up getting products. So yeah, it's pretty fucking bad. But should you pay for a search engine? I don't think so. I don't think you should be paying in some cases. Well, the free tier is like 100 searches with standard AI. But then, of course, 300 searches for $5 a month. I think we can probably achieve similar for a price of free. Now, I've shown you guys things like Seer X and G in the past, but here's another project that sort of popped up. Now, this is something that has literally been updated like 4 days ago, a project called degoog. So it's a search engine aggregator with a comprehensive plugin extension system. So I want to actually show you how to get this up and running. So for this to be working, you need to make sure things like Docker function on your system. So basically, as long as your computer can support virtualization, which you can go into your computer BIOS settings and just make sure if it's enabled or not. Most modern systems, heck, most gaming systems, support virtualization extensions. Now, as long as these things are enabled, you should be able to get Docker up and running. Now, I'm going to assume that you're a good boy using Linux, but if you're somebody that is using things like Mac OS or Windows, God forbid, then you can download something known as Docker Desktop. So you can download it for Windows, whether it be whatever your brand of CPU architecture is, or you can download it for Macintosh. Now, if you're on something like Linux, for instance, installing it is easy as throwing in a few commands. So inside the actual terminal over here, if you're on something like CachyOS, use the actual command to install Docker and Docker Compose. Now, depending on what your system is, this command could be a little bit different. I'm sure if you're a Linux user, you know what the install command or package manager for your system is. Since I'm on CachyOS or an Arch-based operating system, I'm going to do sudo pacman-s docker and Docker Compose. So once you've installed this on systems like CachyOS, you then want to go to your system CTL, you want to enable, and you want to do now and do Docker. So as you enable this service, what you want to do is then go add your user to the Docker account. So it's as simple as going to usermod, sudo usermod -a capital G, and then do Docker, and then do $user. So as you enter this, you've basically installed Docker, you've activated Docker, you've added your account to the Docker user group. So as you're done here, you can then just finally restart your computer, log out, just do a full restart. Once you're done, basically Docker is ready to go. So at this point, it's time to get degoog ready. So if you actually go to their website, they do tell you to run it, you need to create a data folder and make sure it has the right permissions. Now, I think it could be a little bit better, but I'll show you how to get this completely up and running here. So according to them, you want to make a directory and you want to call it, let's say, :degoog, and also you want to make data. So what this is going to do is it's going to create a directory in your home directory, your home, folder, and it's going to make degoog and then data within it. So now we can do cd degoog. So you can see that inside degoog, there's also that data folder. Now you want to be in the degoog directory. Again, change directory to degoog. So now you want to copy what they actually had over here, this entire Docker, compose file. And you want to make it an actual file in the system. So the best way to kind of do that is you can use things like Vim, Nano, or if you have a user interface preference, you can use something like Mousepad, or again, you can also use something like Kate, and you can type in Docker Compose YAML. So enter it exactly like that, hit enter, and it'll fire up a little window for you. You can basically just copy this, paste it into the window, and of course, Control S. So once you see those green lines, everything is basically saved and ready to go. So one thing you want to do is you want to make sure that the actual folder is owned by you, just so there's no permission issues. And the way you do this is chown 1000-1000 and then :degoog data. So now if everything is good and everything works, you can do Docker compose up and -d. So what it's going to be doing is it's going to pull from degoog, and basically all the stuff is happening. And you can just give it like a little bit of second. Basically, it's already done. So again, you can do Docker PS, and you can see that, degoog is actually started. And it started at port 4444 at 0.0.0.0. So now that all of that complicated hackery stuff is done, what you can do is you can go to localhost :4444, hit enter, and look at that, ladies and gentlemen, we have our own personal Google entry. Now the best part about this is once you've gotten all this hard stuff done, the Docker container is installed, provisioned, and just ready to go. Basically, it's running on your computer as its own container. Now, obviously, for the YouTube terms and services, I'm going to go up to the gearbox in the top right, and we're going to go to the engines and disable Google. We can also enable Bing or any of these search engines at this point. Disable anything Google simply because we don't want to be violating Google's terms of services. Software like this is not accepted by Google or really any of these search engines. But because I'm on YouTube, I'm just going to follow the rules over here, and we're going to make sure Google is exempt from this. Don't worry, even with Google gone, the search engine is not a bad look. Now here you can also add extra things like QR code, search engines, math, the movie database, all of this extra stuff, the Internet Archive. But we're going to kind of stick to, again, seeing what the results look like. So obviously, I'm going to go to Coggy really quickly, and we're going to use them as the example. So we'll do that too. PostgreSQL query analysis. So as soon as we hit enter, you'll see that immediately I'm given all this documentation and everything. And the best part about this, ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, is even if it's running on my system, the actual results are quite fast. Within a second, I'm getting 76 very decent, very good results. I'm getting them from Wikipedia, I'm getting good stuff from Reddit. Literally the first click that I have is actually good. Now, the thing about this is it's still not ideal for somebody that probably wants strict privacy. So for that, there's other options too. There's SeerXNG. Now, I've talked about SeerXNG before, but it's as easy to get installed and up and running as you could ever imagine. So going to their website, seerxng.org, you can go to the installation container, and right over here, as long as you have Docker completely installed, it's as easy as taking this command, pulling the latest image and throwing it into your actual terminal. So again, literally just copy that shit, put that right in here, run it, and you download the latest container. Then of course, the next step is to create those directories, so seerxng and config, and seerxng data. Then of course, go into your actual directory. And to show you what mine looks like, this is it. This is the visual interface of what I've been running. So you go to your configuration window and you see the settings YAML tab. So again, this is the settings that you can modify at any given moment. And the only modification that I would really do is probably around something like line 75 to 80 is enter in formats like HTML and JSON. And I'll tell you why in a second if you're interested in things like artificial intelligence. So again, once you get that entirely running through this Docker command, you can basically just stop it by using this command, or remove it by this command, or even start it by doing Docker container start seerxng. And again, what it looks like is as simple as going to localhost, except you go to port 8888. Now, of course, this is what the seerxng container looks like. You can see that, yes, it does take a little bit longer than the degoog side of things, but it does also provide me basically everything that I needed. Now, a lot of this does come from other search engines like Startpage, DuckDuckGo. Basically, it's an aggregator. But it's a good aggregator because it gets rid of all the sponsored stuff, the advertisements, everything that you don't like about Google search is basically removed, and only the good parts actually really remain. So yeah, ultimately in the end, fuck Google search, okay? Fuck any big search engine, whether it be Bing, whether it be whatever. Go to something self-hosted, something local, something private like seerxng even, that actually strips away a lot of the identifiers. Now, it's not perfect. Obviously, one seerxng interface can be identified if it's the only one that has one user feeding prompts through it. But there's also public interfaces that you can also tap into and use. And if you're somebody that really wants their privacy and, easiness, you can use something like Startpage in this case. But the point is, okay, you don't need to be using dog shit searches. Now look, I think search engines have kind of become dog shit in a lot of ways, simply because looking for stuff on the internet has basically become a situation where Google search has allowed itself, by looking for AI even, to almost cannibalize on itself. And what I mean by that is a lot of the search results you find online are actually artificial intelligence slop written. So a good example of this I'll show you is I actually got a local artificial intelligence by the name of Qwen 3.5 9 billion parameters. Now you can download a program like LM Studio, and inside LM Studio, you can download Qwen 3.5, and provided you have enough of GPU space for it, you can install it and basically use a local artificial intelligence. Now, I know for a lot of people who are like, I hate AI. Look, I don't like big budget artificial intelligences either, but I do think that since this technology is here, you can at least ethically use it by downloading an open source model and at least use artificial intelligence privately and without giving your information up to some of the big guys above you. So I downloaded Qwen 3.5, and using the MCP availability, I was able to plug it into my own Seer XNG setup. So the way that you do this is you go to the developer tab, you click on MCP JSON, and if you have an actual Seer XNG setup going, you can copy exactly what's written over here, and you can just change this, to whatever is applicable for you. So mine is, my local host, port 888. And what I told you earlier about that JSON prompt, what JSON allows you to do is it lets artificial intelligences work with that software. So provided I have all of this stuff ready to go, I can basically ask my local AI to look for, again, this topic. So for instance, I asked it to look online about all of this information. It actually did reach the internet, read articles, and basically go through and feed me the information. Now, for the most part, a lot of this might actually be decent. But if you actually look carefully into where it read from, it might actually be just other AI slop that it regurgitated. That's the issue with artificial intelligence searching that Google and everyone wants to push you towards. It always cannibalizes from other AIs. None of these things are sentient. What they do is they look at what another AI wrote and then they basically present it. And it just leads to more and more hallucinations. And it makes you, as a user, constantly have to verify and make sure that what's written over here is actually good. Now, the other thing about the internet is there's so much slop that gets thrown out, and it's so easy to make because after all of this research, I asked the AI to write me an entire article and give me an output in HTML so I can just copy and paste that to a web server. And here, lo and behold, within seconds, it did do all of that. And you know what it looks like? Here, I'll put it up right now for you to see. So here it is, boys, slop.html. Yeah, the AI literally wrote like what is in its mind a full website, a full article. Now, obviously, it looks like a standard AI slop article, and you can probably make it look better. But yeah, that is what it is, okay? This is basically what the internet is like these days. Like, it just throws up dog shit. And a lot of the big AIs like Google will grab this and sometimes throw it at the top of the search without even ever truly verifying if what's written in this is actually valid. I think when you start to look at the internet, right, like there's this report that I keep reading from like Imperva where they talk about the bad bot report. And generally the interesting thing for me is looking at how much of the internet traffic online is actually just AI. And according to them, since 2025, 51% of all web traffic is all artificial intelligence. It's one of the reasons why we say the dead internet theory is not so much a theory, it's actually a fact. And the fact is, the internet is being cannibalized by the same technology that a lot of these big tech firms keep pushing. Look, I'm not saying you can get rid of LLMs. They're unfortunately a technology that's here to stay. The problem is it's what it's doing to the internet as a whole. Forget YouTube Shorts, forget AI slop videos, forget AI slop memes. Just think about the information that you're looking for on the internet constantly being regurgitated, hallucinated, and fed to the top of your search results. If the biggest search engine in the world is having issues doing this, alongside constantly pushing you with ads, it's time to get off that shit and to start looking at the self-hosted trend. The two technologies I showed you, degoog and Seer XNG, are so light that you can run them on a laptop, you can run them on basically any device in an edge fashion, and use actual local search in a way that's just overall better. Like there is no reason after today that you should even consider switching to things like Brave Search or, anything else really, because a lot of these other search engines suffer from similar issues. I would love to promote Brave Search. I love the Brave browser, but their love for artificial intelligence and all of that extra shit, even with DuckDuckGo, these are not options that I consider worthwhile telling to my audience. But for you guys, taking just a little tiny extra steps, and really it is just tiny extra steps, right? Like I did this all within 20 minutes live for you. So again, if you follow my directions, it's not going to take you too long, but you do it once and you have an experience that is far better overall. Look, I used to love going to the internet and going to websites like systemshock.org or, places like Project Manhunt, which unfortunately now is like Dixmoor Hospital. Like these are video game modding, video game centric websites. Unfortunately, it seems like even when it comes to these small communities, they're now being gated behind Reddits or even worse, like just Discord communities that can go poof at any moment. And again, I miss the days of the internet when things were always in these smaller communities and searching for them online didn't involve me downloading self-hosted materials to even properly find anymore. But that's where we're at right now. I think the only way things are going to change is if there's an actual resistance to this crap. And people, for the most part, realize that instead of, look, I can make a video bitching about how Google search is bad and get like a million fucking views, right? Like that's easy. But I think it's more important is if we spend these time, like we spend these minutes making these videos, saying, yes, Google search sucks ass. Okay. It really does. So does Bing. So does a lot of these search engines for a lot of bullshit they tack on. But here's an alternative. And I've shown you two alternatives today, and there's many more that exist. If you want things like AI search, for instance, right? There's projects like Perplexica, which literally allow you to actually take Perplexity, which is this paid for, search, engine online, and use a local version for you. But ultimately, at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, this is just, again, I wanted to make this video because I really did want to make this proper Google video, but you had to start from Google search. Now, there's a lot of other aspects of Google that you can look at that are better done in a self-hosted manner, and a lot of it is the fault of Google as most tech companies in the US slowly shifting themselves into these AI behemoths that again, I'm sure it makes a lot of fucking money for these guys because they're trading trillions of dollars around with each other, but it leads to a rapid enshittification of the internet that I think the only way to counter is if people understand that there are better options that are available and options that are not out of their grasp, okay? Running a local AI chatbot and LLM that can do 80 to 90% of what a big LLM can do, all for free, all privately, all running locally on your system, is something that many people probably don't know that they can do, but you can do it. I showed you how to do it in this video. Some people think, do I need like a NASA computer to do a search engine? No. Search engine aggregators, I've shown you, exist on your system. So start using them today and fuck the traditional big boy search engines that honestly are going into the ether. If you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike if you dislike it. I am out.